Last time, we built the roadbed for a dual-gauge logging line. This starts at an interchange with the main line, climbs to a lumber mill, and then snakes across a river. It then goes around a mountain, ending at a logging camp. To deal with potential derailments in the main line beneath the mountains, I designed a removable mountain to allow for complete access underneath the logging line. Like something out of one of those cake-centric reality TV shows, I layered blue foam into a shape that perfectly fits inside the logging line's curves. I then quickly mocked up some potential tree locations with some bare trunks. We briefly considered putting the water tower adjacent to the waterfall, but it overpowered the scene. The waterfall will make for quite a dramatic element for posing engines for photographs once scenery is complete here. One of the most important design constraints my client gave me was that he didn't want any vertical backdrop separating any area of the layout. So I devised the entire layout to use the actual mountainous terrain to separate each scene from one another. Each part of the layout uses tunnels, cuts, and ridgelines to separate out each scene, and the super tall second-growth redwoods will complete the look. Inspired by the cliff faces near Point Reyes along the old NPC narrow gauge, the first scene you encounter is a dramatic granite cliff face. The double-track main line skirts the bottom of the cliffs alongside the bay before disappearing into a tunnel on the other side of the layout. Next, it was time to carve the bayside headlands along the coastline. Large chunks were trimmed to size with a hot wire foam cutter before carving began in earnest. After the carving was mostly done, I gave it a primer layer and then filled in the cracks with Sculptamold. While the paint was drying, I put the first layer of plaster gauze on the removable mountain. Next, I covered the rest of the mountain in Sculptamold, making sure to leave the rock portions I carved exposed. The logging camp will be built into the hill above the switchback. After that was dry, it was time to build another removable piece, this time a small town on the river valley side. I carved out a piece of foam to fit below the logging line and marked out the road and building sites with a marker. A country road connects the town with the state highway that runs alongside the river and under the trestle. Neither of these commercial buildings will be where they are in this photo, but they provided excellent stand-ins in the meantime. I love telling realistic stories of infrastructure wherever I can when I build model railroads. This one is my favorite example on this layout. A hand-dug and black powder-blasted original tunnel bore represents the original main line. The interiors of all the tunnels on this line are hand-carved in foam to represent the realistic interior you'd find in these older bores. Meanwhile, the Harriman-era modern alignment features a newer concrete tunnel portal and a mix of blasted and concrete tunnel lining. The real NWP was not double-tracked, so this is representative of other main lines elsewhere in California. My client wanted a double-track main line for more enjoyable operations with his friends. Now the river valley is all primed and ready for scenery. We've already come a long way from the chunks of pink foam earlier. Now we're using an airbrush and acrylic paint to make the rock faces look realistic. This overview of the logging line switchback shows judicious use of rock cuts and minimal retaining walls to keep it from looking like a stair step. This is a common faux pas you see all too often with club layouts. Eventually, this entire area will be covered with very, very dense, lush undergrowth, giant stumps, and young redwood trees. A rich mix of acrylic paint in 4 to 6 layers is how I did the rockwork. Burnt sienna, umbers, black and tan, all mixed together, some washes, and some dry brushing, all tie it together. The colors were chosen to match photographic reference and the sifted dirt my client procured from a road trip he took 35 years ago. The dirt was stored for decades in a 5-gallon bucket. It required multiple sifting passes to be the right scale to be used on the layout. Also make sure to pick out random debris and use a magnet to sift out anything that's ferrous, or else it'll get stuck in motors. I sifted out medium and large rocks for placement elsewhere. The medium rocks were perfect to place at the base of the carved rock faces and then in the riverbed. The larger boulders will be placed at the base of cliffs and along the riverbank. A gas station is at the base of the hill. This will eventually be replaced with the Bar Mills laser-cut wooden kit. Now comes the real fun, static grass. I used an older Knox static grass master with a wide variety of static grass brands, colors, and lengths. Combined with real stones, it's all coming together as a great first layer. If you want to learn more on how to do static grass, I highly recommend Luke Towan's series of videos on static grass application. I quickly painted in the highway. Eventually it'll get accurate 1960s Caltrans road striping and signage. Now for a little tutorial on how to carve your own rock formations in foam using only a box cutter. First, mask off the area you don't want a billion blue blistering foam chips all over. Extend the blade out the usual length and using photographs as your guide, score X patterns up and down the rock face in a random formation. Then retract the blade a bit so the perforation doesn't cause the blade to chip off. Then drag the blade down the side of your cliffs and make little crevasses. It'll magically create beautiful and 100% unique looking rock faces. No more need for stupid rock molds ever again. Fill in the gaps and, like a cake, ice the top of the cliffs where dirt would actually be. Then prime it your base color and allow it to dry. Then, using a stiff bristle brush or airbrush, stipple in different colored layers of paint to make it look realistic. And voila! You have a beautiful rock face. A note on bringing joy in a dystopia. In September 2020, we had one of the worst fire seasons to hit California. The sky turned an unearthly orange akin to what, until that day, seemed only possible in science fiction, like something from Blade Runner 2049. Part of me was fascinated, part of me was horrified, so I decided to go bring some joy to my client instead of hiding inside. I captured this photo going across the Bay Bridge around noon. It was darker than an hour after sunset. My client appreciated the company on such a surreal day, and it gives me purpose to bring joy to people who need it. This is why I build layouts. This is why I do what I do. Next, I wanted a beautiful house to live atop the tunnel, and my client had the surprisingly excellent Woodland Scenics kit in his collection, so I thought I'd give it a go. An iconic color scheme for 19th century homes in the Redwood Empire has always been all white with a red shingled roof, so I followed that handsome guideline when I was painting. First things first, priming all of the parts. The kit itself is very, very nicely designed. It includes dozens of wonderful small details to enrich anywhere on your layout. I'm particularly impressed with the garden hose reel and the rocking chair. Drain gutters and downspouts are also things that need to be in every house kit. Take note of that, manufacturers. Note the wear paths on the porches near the doors and the steps. I gave the porch a worn but maintained look, and the entire house got a light wash of grime to make it look like a good old farmhouse. I sited the house with the porch overlooking the river valley and the living room bay window in just the right place for a rainy day reading. Next, I built a fence around it, added foliage and static grass. This is again just the first layer. More dense brush and trees will follow in time. I used a Central Valley staircase kit to get the house connected up with the road down below. I scratch-built the railing from strip lumber. Then I planted a mature California live oak in the backyard. I highly recommend building the kit over buying the ready-to-run version, since the stock paint job the built-up one comes with is kind of ugly and not very prototypically correct. As I mentioned in the first episode, I always seek to improve my clients' lives wherever I can in addition to the layout. He wanted to transform a cluttered sunroom into a showplace for his impressive succulent collection, so I designed a sloping, tiered redwood shelf for him. This maximizes light for the plants and makes them easy to reach. Nothing is buried deep behind normal shelves. I completed it just in time for his mom's 100th birthday, and it was a sight to see with all the cacti installed and thriving in the light. Shortly afterward, he then decided to remodel his entire kitchen and den, which then extended into the entire first floor in a gargantuan remodeling effort. I wanted to keep clear of the chaos of that, so I'm taking a break from this layout project for the time being. Work on that began in September 2021, so we'll pick up with the layout construction once they're done remodeling the home interior in a couple of months. Support from viewers like you make these videos possible. My goal for this spring is to grow to 100 patrons supporting my work. That will allow me to dedicate time to regular video production in addition to my client work. This can be at any level, but $15 and higher will net you this beautiful mug. This has been Inner Urban Era. Thank you, and goodbye.